So what we're going to be talking about today is something that every single person is most likely in fault of. So one thing that I've seen a lot of times with a lot of my clients, and one of the biggest things that we see that really affects metabolic health, not just metabolic health, but your general body composition as well, is what your blood sugar is, when you're inputting your sugars, when you're inputting your processed carbs, when you're inputting your alcohol. So many people like to have a couple beers at night, you have a couple glasses of wine, you have a couple drinks, whatever it might be. So we're going to be talking about late night sugar, carbs, alcohol consumption, body composition, and metabolic health. And what does this actually mean for you? So if we take a look here, now you've heard the old tale, you shouldn't eat after a certain time, and you may think this is actually an old wives' tale. Well, there's actually quite a bit of science behind it. So if you look at what's actually going on metabolically and what your organs are actually doing during this time of day, as the day goes on longer and longer and longer, and so right here is going to be what's going to be considered, this is going to be midnight right here on this chart specifically. Midnight right about here, and then we're looking into our early waking hours, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., all the way to 5 a.m., 6 a.m. too. So when we look at it here, to start off a little bit of background, during these hours, your internal organs are down-regulating, they're resetting, they're doing stuff, so they're not really helping you out nearly as much as you think they are. They're not really as active as they are during our earlier times of the day, which would mirror this time during our AM hours, or our afternoon hours. So if we look here, stomach is going to be blue, which is going to be anywhere between midnight and 3 a.m. This is down regulating. Your pancreas, which is your insulin, your sugar processing, 1 to 4 a.m. is which is down regulating, and then your liver between 2 to 5 a.m. is down regulating as well. So what does this mean? They're not processing sugars, they're not processing carbs, and they're not processing the stuff that you're putting into your body nearly as well as they were during the daytime. I'm not going to give an exact rate of how much this is, but it's very decreased. Now, if we take a look at when most people input the majority of their alcohol, so we'll start with alcohol because this is going to be the one where, oh, well, I don't want to give up my alcohol. I want you to make sure you understand what's going on during this time. So if you're drinking anything that's a mixed drink, if you're drinking anything with soda, anything that has refined sugar in it, beer, even a couple beers at night, can severely hurt your body composition and can severely hurt your metabolic health. So if we take a look right here, let's say what your standard drinking session is actually going to start occurring. It's probably going to start occurring, it may start at dinner time, but let's talk about your standard younger person when they're starting to drink. Normally around 8 or 9 o'clock is when they start drinking. Okay, so we're going to use red here for our unhealthy increases. Right around 9 here, this starts kicking in. We start drinking, right about here. We're going to keep on drinking. We're inputting our sugars, inputting our carbs. Blood alcohol is going up, blood sugar is going up, we're coming up. And I know in New York it's a little bit different here, but let's say we stop drinking, you have your shot of beer right at the end of the night at 2 o'clock when the bars close, right? So this could even go even later, but look at what time we're starting to encroach upon here. We're starting to encroach upon the shutdown time. So now let's say you had a couple drinks, even if you had 2, 3, 4 beers. This is elevating your blood sugar right as you're going into this potential shutdown time or deregulating time where the 3 things that help you process your blood alcohol are pretty much not doing a whole lot to help you. Our stomach is down regulating, our pancreas is down regulating, our liver is down regulating. So our stomach is digesting things slower, which is not always necessarily the best thing. Your pancreas is no longer producing the insulin response that it normally would earlier in the daytime. And your liver is not filtering out the blood alcohol and metabolizing the blood alcohol nearly as fast as it should. So why is this a problem? So let's say all of a sudden, 3 a.m. you pass out, and guess what? your blood alcohol, your blood sugar and everything like that, it's not burning off, it's not decreasing like it should. It's going, a red line dot here is gonna be an unhealthy elevated blood sugar level over time. So 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and this can keep continuing elevated all the way until you wake up and start continuing through your day. Now, you already start your day off here. Let's hypothetically say your standard day is going to start anywhere between 7 and 9 a.m. I'm normally up at 5, but I'm called a crazy person most of the time. So this is our normal start day, wake up time. So, what did you just do? Even simply by having a little bit of alcohol or a little bit of sweets or something in this time span here, even if you were to stop drinking at 10, 11 o'clock, this is going to still keep on going through this time, and you're still going to start your day with an elevated blood sugar level. Now, why is this such a problem? Now, most people when you're younger, this is not insanely a problem. But the big thing that starts happening here is over time, you start spending more and more and more and more of your day in this elevated blood sugar level. Now, what does this do? The elevated blood sugar, it makes you somewhat insulin resistant, and it also inflames the pancreatic islet cells here. So those cells that help you produce insulin, they become inflamed, and after being inflamed for a certain amount of time because of overworking so much, the body actually develops an immune response, and this is actually where we see people start taking the turn towards becoming diabetic. Now, this is not something you necessarily want, and this is also metabolically super unhealthy. How is this going to affect your body composition? Oh, weird. So now we have all this excess blood sugar right through all of our late night hours, our early morning hours, right through here. Your body's in storage mode. It's storing. You're not metabolizing, you're not burning off all of this excess blood glucose, and it's just hanging around in storage, gaining more and more body fat, more and more body fat, more and more body fat. It's amazing how much a six-pack a night can erase your six-pack very, very quickly. If you've ever seen the transformation pictures of 6 months of hard work versus a week of drinking, this is exactly what we're talking about right here. This is where things start getting a little wild. You're literally putting the worst possible thing that you could be putting into your body at the worst possible time of the day. And this also falls into our sugars, our carbs, our refined sugars, our late night snacking, candy. One thing that you should be doing is if you're going to eat late, in this later portion of the night here, this 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 even on, you should be keeping this to your proteins and your fats. Because guess what? They're not going to cause nearly as significant of an insulin response. Naturally, if we were looking at this here, let's say 9 o'clock p.m. is my cutoff time to when I stop eating. I eat my last meal at 9 o'clock. I get a slight little bit of an increase in my blood sugar, and then, oh, here it starts returning back down. So we start returning back to our normal blood sugar. So this light greeted dotted line is going to be our normal resting blood sugar here. So this is how we end up starting our day in this lower zone here. And then your first meal of the day and your eating so forth after is not nearly as damaging. You're not falling into these elevated sugar. You're not falling into these elevated fat stores. All this stuff starts adding up. It's amazing how a couple snacks late at night at the improper time can acute to another 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds in the unwanted areas that we want. Most people eat very, very healthy during the majority times of the day, and then if we don't get enough nutrients during the daytime, guess what times we start seeing these really, really bad cravings. These really bad craving times, I went through my whole day, finished work, went did a workout, whatever it might be, I missed 2 meals today, and now this zone right in here, everyone's going to munchie town. 9 to 12 o'clock. Maybe even over into here a little bit as well. and this is super unhealthy. Naturally, what we see in a standard metabolism when people are eating properly, they normally go through this process, they wake up, they eat their first meal, blood sugar spikes, drops really quickly. They eat their second meal, blood sugar spikes, drops really quickly. Eat another meal, blood sugar spikes, drops really quickly. If you're starting elevated and you get a blood pressure, and you get a blood glucose spike, pardon my mistake there, blood glucose spike, as soon as that spikes up, it's already well above what your resting should be. So you spend more time in your day with the blood sugar levels of an unregulated diabetic person than you do a metabolically healthy one. Which, guess what this starts turning you towards a little bit more? Things are starting to make a little sense now. All this stuff does start adding up. So the big thing we start seeing here is if we can simply start being a little more advantageous and a little more conscientious about this kind of section of our pie chart here, our clock, even by simply just making the change of cutting off my eating at a specific time of the day, I'm making myself a little bit less likely to have pancreatic problems. I'm less likely to have stomach problems. Most people don't know how to fast, or they don't know how to fast without binging. One thing we can see here, especially as we age, younger people are very much able to recover from this, but as you get older, this starts causing a lot more metabolic problems. We start seeing bad pancreatic enzyme function, not really insulin resistant a little bit. All this late night processing as well, you're getting all this overload on your liver right here because it's down regulated and you're pumping alcohol into it. Your blood alcohol level staying elevated even longer than it naturally would here, once again, causing inflammatory response towards the liver, which we start working towards a fatty liver now. So if we see some of the bigger metabolic issues can simply start being addressed by when we're actually consuming our alcohols. When are we consuming our sugars? I would say no alcohol if possible, but guess what? Most people in America, most people around the world, they like to have a drink or two. But guess what? That drink or two in these late night hours can literally screw the rest of your day for every day after that. Now, even seeing something here as well, and you saw I posted this on my story yesterday. Yes, I ate refined sugar yesterday. I ate what was considered, I would eat candy. I ate a bunch of sour worms, which are straight refined sugar. Check my resting blood glucose this morning at 7 a.m. It's over 100. It's well elevated. It's clear. It's not so far outside the zone because I ate them a little earlier in the day. But even eating something so refined sugar, so refined carbohydrates like in alcohol and sweets and processed foods, you get this really long, drawn out, horrid spike. And something that we also see here is two things that you don't want to combine. Some things that really cause some really long-term bad insulin problems, some weight loss problems as well. You're going to be holding a lot more body fat that you're not really wanting to hang on to, simply when we're combining specific nutrients. So let's say something that you're doing, you're combining a refined sugar or a processed sugar, anything that could be candy, anything that's flour-based, beer, your alcohols, anything that has these excess carbohydrates in it. When you combine these simple sugars with a processed fat or a processed vegetable oil, now what you did was you're just elongating the process that you're going to be releasing these bad sugars into the body. So let's say normally if you had had just that sugar by itself, maybe it processes in 5 hours. Okay, well now we combine that with a processed vegetable oil, like in most of our potato chips, our big greasy meals, all these extra things. You get a very large amount of carbohydrates with a large amount of difficult to process fats. As your body works through the fats, it's not really getting to the sugars. Your body likes to process what's hardest first. It's going to start working through the fats, and as it gets through the fats a little more, it's going to start working on the sugars. Now we just elongated this response. It takes you 12, 15, 20 hours to fully digest and process this one single meal or this one kind of input frequency. And you're not really eating too much. You're not going to get hungry. You're not really fueling your metabolism. You're not processing your blood sugars very well. And one thing that we want to see here, we will get into this chart in another section here, but I want to focus primarily on this here. where this late night eating section is super detrimental to these primary organs, which are going to really kind of determine, if you look here, your stomach and your intestines and everything like that, your stomach and intestines are your primary gut health. This is why we see, it's actually one of the reasons why diabetics are somewhat immune compromised. It's not just you that's immune compromised or your blood that's immune compromised or whatever it might be. Your immune cells are immunocompromised as well. They're insulin resistant. They need sugars to be able to process. If you're insulin resistant, they're not going to function very well. Guess what? Your white blood cells and all your different lymphocytes and stuff, they need to function to be able to fight things off. So it's also something we kind of look at time of the year. So if we look at during our flu season or during our winter seasons, guess what? It's normally the coldest outside. Most people want to eat and eat and eat because it's cold and it's gray and whatever it might be. This is actually, I believe, one of the primary prevalent reasons, because not enough people understand their habits enough to battle off these wintertime cravings, which actually make you more likely to get sick. Processed foods, processed sugars, they mess up your gut health and they mess up your immune health. And even so, it makes it 10 times worse if the time that you're consuming them is later in the day here, or early in the morning. You'd almost better be having that 6-pack of beer right when you wake up at 8 a.m., metabolically, of course. I don't know if your boss would like you very much there. Okay, but some of the things I want to overlay here, and some of the things I've written down here. So some of the negatives, we have higher resting blood glucose upon waking. Okay, blood glucose stays elevated longer after waking. We have delayed stomach emptying. We have delayed pancreatic activity. We have delayed liver processing of alcohols. And so this is something for my big drinkers and all the people who like to go out and drink. Anyone who's gotten a DUI, anyone who's had trouble with the police and drinking before, guess what? This is why I'm going to explain exactly why you've woken up in the morning and you still got that DUI or you still had that high blood alcohol level. You stopped drinking right at 2 o'clock. Okay, cool. You dropped 2 shots down and you dropped your beer down or whatever it might be. Cool. You went about an hour, laid down at 3 a.m. Your stomach's not emptying. Your liver's not processing any of these things. Everything pretty much goes on stall until, let's say, 5 a.m. here. Stall right through here. We'll even take it till 6. They'll say right about here is when it stalls out. When everything starts kind of waking up again. So your blood alcohol processing just paused while you're passed out. Get the great idea. I'm going to wake up at 6. I'm going to wake up at 7. Even so, guess what? That blood alcohol level was elevated this entire time. It only starts going down at 5, 6 a.m. when everything starts upregulating again. So guess what? This is where someone gets in their car at 6, 7 a.m. and they get pulled over and they get a DUI the morning after. Guess what? Your blood alcohol level is way too high at this time of the night. Everything shuts on down, everything waits, and then now everything starts processing. You may actually not be legally able to drive, let's say, until 10, 11, 12 noon. This is kind of important if you have some stuff to do the next day, right? Okay? So, one last thing that I want to dip into here, and we will be making a couple extra things on here. So, I'm going to try to make this into a series. But what we're looking at here is this the general thing. You think the late night snacking doesn't add up, the late night alcohol doesn't add up, all these extra things. I don't want to be the finger wagger here or anything, but we kind of look at people who struggle with weight, struggle with metabolic disorders and all these different things, and if we look at their actual tendencies of when they're eating and different stuff like that, I'm betting you 95% of the time, this portion of our clock is going to be very filled in with most of their food and most of their alcohol and most of their sugar and most of their carbohydrate input. And this is actually one of the ways, and I'm going to catch some flack for this, you can work your way out of these disorders. to a certain extent. You can help reverse these things after some damage has been done, as long as it's not taken too far, by cleaning up these sections here. Cutting out some of the drinking, cutting out some of the alcohol, staying away from your processed sugars, staying away from your processed flours. Even wheat is still, whole wheat, it's still flour, okay? Still flour. You're still getting the same exact insulin response from it. And your body is still being deconditioned, and it's also gonna stall your metabolism and increase your body fat stores. All right? We'll be touching a little bit more on these things, but this is just a little bit for all you late night snackers, all you late night drinkers, all your bar rats, everything like that. If you're wondering why you're not feeling so hot, why you're waking up feeling kind of crappy, why you have no appetite through the rest of the day, because your blood glucose is elevated, you're not getting the hunger response. You're not going to start your day at the right spot if you're ending your day at the wrong spot. All right, guys, signing off. Hope this was some good knowledge for you.